They told me I wasn't family enough for Christmas this year. All because I don't have kids. What they didn't expect was that instead of sulking, I'd book myself the most luxurious kid-free holiday imaginable, and make sure they saw every glorious second of it. I had been waiting all week, my phone glued to my side, for the call that usually came without hesitation. It was the annual pre-holiday debrief from my sister Megan. You know, the one, where she'd meticulously go over every excruciating detail of our Christmas plans, ensuring everyone had their designated roles, every tradition was honored, and everything would go off without a hitch. And for years I was always in the thick of it. Whether it was bringing my signature pecan pie, or spending Christmas Eve helping my nieces and nephews with last-minute gift wrapping, I was always there. These traditions in our family, they were sacred. Or so I thought. This year the call finally came, but it was nothing like I expected. Megan's voice had that familiar, clipped tone she used when she was trying to soften bad news. "Hey Lucas," she started, and instantly a cold dread twisted in my gut. I cut straight to the point, already sensing something was terribly off. "So what's the plan for Christmas this year? Should I bring dessert again?" There was a pregnant pause, a hesitation that felt like an eternity, before Megan spoke again. Her voice was laced with something that sounded like guilt, but honestly, it wasn't quite enough to be an actual apology. "Yeah, about that," she said carefully. "We were talking and we decided that this year we're going to keep things really, kid-focused." My brows furrowed, my mind struggling to process what she was actually saying. "Okay?" I prompted, utterly confused. Megan sighed, a sound that implied I was the one inconveniencing her. "It's just, with the kids getting older, they're more into their own traditions now, and we just felt like it would be easier if it was just immediate family, parents and kids. That kind of thing." The words hit me like a physical blow, a stinging slap across the face. Immediate family. As if I wasn't part of it. As if I was some distant relative they barely saw once a year, instead of the person who had helped raise their kids, dropped everything to babysit at the last minute, and spent years making sure every single holiday was as special as it could possibly be. My throat suddenly felt like sandpaper. "So what does that mean exactly?" I managed to choke out. Another sigh. "It just means that, this year we're trying something different. It's not personal, Lucas. It's just you wouldn't really understand, It's different when you have kids." And just like that, something inside me snapped. Something raw and bitter that had been simmering beneath the surface for years, but had never fully erupted until this very moment. "I wouldn't understand?" I repeated, my voice sharper than I intended, laced with a venom I rarely allowed myself to show. "Are you seriously telling me that because I don't have kids, I don't belong at Christmas with my own family?" "That's not what I'm saying," Megan said quickly, but there was no conviction in her voice, no genuine belief. "Oh, but that's exactly what you're saying." I shot back, my anger boiling over. "I've been part of every Christmas since the beginning. I've done everything for those kids. And now suddenly, I'm not qualified to celebrate with you." Megan's tone immediately turned defensive, a warning edge creeping in. "Lucas, don't make this a big deal. It's just 1 year. And we just want to focus on family." I let out a harsh, bitter laugh, the sound hollow even to my own ears. "Family? And what am I then? Some outsider? Because last I checked, I was the one who stayed up wrapping presents with you while your husband was asleep on the couch. I was the one who made sure your kids had matching Christmas pajamas. But sure, Megan, I don't understand what family means." "Lucas," she said again, a clear threat in her voice, but I was done. Completely and utterly done. "You know what? Fine," I said, forcing my voice to stay eerily even to hide the tremor in my hands. "Have your little kid-focused Christmas. I hope it's everything you want it to be." Megan started to say something else, but I didn't wait to hear it. I ended the call and practically threw my phone onto the couch, my hands shaking with a volatile mixture of anger and disbelief. For a few minutes I just sat there, staring blankly at the wall, my thoughts racing in a furious torrent. Was this really happening? Had I truly just been kicked out of my own family's holiday traditions because I didn't have children? The sheer injustice of it all made my blood boil. Never once had I ever considered that my worth in this family was somehow tied to my reproductive status. But apparently to them it was. Apparently my years of contributions didn't count. The fact that I had poured so much of my time, my effort, and my unconditional love into them meant absolutely nothing. Fine. If that's how they saw it, then I wasn't going to sit around feeling sorry for myself. If they didn't want me at Christmas, then I'd go somewhere I was wanted. Or, more accurately, somewhere I could create my own damn happiness. I grabbed my laptop, my fingers flying over the keyboard as I opened a travel booking website, a fierce determination hardening my resolve. I refused to sit in my apartment, stewing in resentment, letting their self-righteous decision ruin my holidays while they laughed, exchanged gifts, and indulged in their exclusive little version of what family was supposed to be. Oh no, I was not going to be that pathetic, left-behind relative, sitting alone with a microwave dinner, pretending the holiday season didn't exist. And I wasn't just going to take myself on some low-effort, sad little getaway. I was going to do it big. If they were so certain that I wasn't part of their picture-perfect Christmas, then I would give myself something better than anything they could possibly imagine. I wanted first-class flights, ocean views, unlimited cocktails, and white sand beaches stretching farther than the eye could see. It didn't take long before I found the perfect place. An exclusive 5-star resort in the Caribbean. The kind of place that catered to people who weren't dragging around sticky-fingered toddlers or dealing with passive-aggressive in-laws. Every picture screamed peace, freedom, and absolute indulgence. And for the first time that evening, a genuine smile, a truly defiant one, curled at the edges of my lips. I booked the entire trip in under 10 minutes, upgrading to the best suite they had, adding spa treatments, ocean excursions, and champagne breakfasts, because why the hell not? As soon as I hit confirm, something inside me shifted. A profound sense of liberation. If they wanted me gone, then fine, I was gone. But I wasn't going to sulk about it. I was going to have the best damn Christmas of my life. And I was going to make damn sure they knew it. I pulled out my suitcase and started packing, shoving in designer shirts, swim trunks, and anything that screamed wealth and independence. Every piece of clothing I folded reminded me of the years I had spent bending over backward to make Christmas perfect for a family that didn't even consider me an essential part of it. The endless hours spent wrapping presents for their kids, standing in line for Black Friday deals so Megan's twins could have the newest, most expensive toys. All the times I played Santa at our family gatherings, sitting there in an itchy red suit, sweating under a fake beard, just so Megan and Ryan could sip their wine and relax while their kids shrieked in delight. And yet, after all that, I was told I wasn't enough because I didn't have children of my own. It was sickening. But now I imagine Megan and Ryan sitting around their Christmas tree, checking their phones, expecting maybe a sad little Merry Christmas text from me, only to find my social media flooded with pictures of crystal clear water, palm trees swaying under a golden sunset, and me lounging poolside with a drink in my hand and not a single damn care in the world. They were going to see it, and I couldn't wait for their reactions. The moment I stepped off the plane, a warm gust of tropical air wrapped around me, carrying the intoxicating scent of salt and hibiscus. It instantly reminded me that I was far, far away from the cold, gray December my family was currently enduring. The resort's private driver was already waiting for me, holding a sign with my name written in elegant gold script. A small but powerful reminder that I wasn't here as an afterthought, a disposable extra, or someone deemed unworthy of inclusion. The drive to the resort was a dream, with palm trees lining the winding roads, their towering silhouettes swaying gently against a sky so impossibly blue it almost looked artificial. When the vehicle finally pulled up to the grand entrance, my breath caught. The sheer opulence of the place was astounding. Towering marble columns, cascading waterfalls, impossibly clear infinity pools stretching toward the horizon, and staff dressed in crisp white uniforms waiting with cool towels and flutes of champagne. As the concierge led me through the sprawling lobby, pointing out the various amenities, 3 world-class restaurants, an award-winning spa, private cabanas with personal butlers, a beachfront bar stocked with rare imported wines, I barely managed to suppress a triumphant grin. While Megan and Ryan were probably knee-deep in wrapping paper, trying to control screaming children and pretending to enjoy another chaotic, stress-filled family Christmas, I was here sipping champagne before I'd even checked into my suite. When the doors to my room swung open, revealing a penthouse-sized space with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the ocean, a sprawling king-size bed draped in the softest Egyptian cotton sheets, and a private plunge pool just steps away from a sun-drenched terrace, I knew with absolute certainty that I had made the right decision. I wasted no time slipping into swim trunks, draping a linen shirt over my shoulders, and making my way down to the adults-only infinity pool, where servers glided effortlessly between guests, balancing trays of handcrafted cocktails and fresh seafood platters. I sank into the warm water, letting my body relax for what felt like the first time in months. By the way, if you're still with me on this wild ride, make sure to hit that subscribe button. You won't want to miss the unbelievable stories I have coming up next. As the bartender placed a perfectly chilled mojito in my hand, I knew exactly what I had to do next. Reaching for my phone, I angled the camera just right, capturing the golden hues of the setting sun as it dipped below the horizon, the endless expanse of turquoise water stretching out before me. The photo was breathtaking, a picture-perfect moment of peace and indulgence. Without hesitating, I typed out the caption, "Family is overrated. This view, however, flawless." The second I hit post, I set my phone down, leaned back against the smooth stone edge of the pool, and took a slow sip of my drink. I didn't have to wait long. The first notification popped up, my phone vibrating insistently against the plush towel beside me. "Megan, where are you?" I smirked, lifting my glass in a silent toast to myself. Let her sweat. A few moments later, another message appeared. "Ryan. Wow, must be nice. This was almost too easy. I didn't even need to reply. I knew exactly what was happening on the other end of those messages. They had expected me to sulk, to feel sorry for myself, to spend Christmas alone and miserable, while they celebrated in their exclusive little parents-only club. They had convinced themselves that I would sit at home mourning the loss of traditions that apparently had only ever mattered to me. Instead, they were sitting there staring at their phones, knowing that I was somewhere better, somewhere they could never afford, somewhere that didn't require me to beg for a seat at the table. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the warm Caribbean sunlight streaming through the massive glass windows of my suite, casting a golden glow across the crisp white sheets that smelled like lavender and fresh ocean air. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I had woken up on Christmas morning without a to-do list, without the stress of wrapping last-minute presents, and without the pressure of pretending everything was perfect. Reaching for my phone, I expected to find a few casual holiday greetings. But instead, I was met with an overwhelming flood of missed calls and text messages, each notification stacking on top of the last like a desperate, tangled web of emotional manipulation. The messages were exactly what I expected, thinly veiled guilt trips disguised as concern, each one dripping with a kind of emotional weight that only a family like mine could manufacture when they realized they had lost control of the narrative. Megan. Mom is really upset, Lucas. She feels like you're abandoning us. She keeps crying, and I don't know what to tell her. Ryan. They're seriously making us look bad. Everyone is asking where you are. And it's embarrassing that we don't have an answer. A few messages down, there was one from my mother. We didn't mean to exclude you, sweetie. We just didn't think it was a big deal. Come back. We'll make room for you. I let out a sharp, humorless laugh as I tossed my phone onto the bed beside me. Now they cared? Now they were suddenly worried about my feelings, about my presence, about whether or not I felt included. Where was all this concern when they had made the decision to cut me out of their holiday plans? When they had decided that I didn't count as real family because I didn't have children? The worst part wasn't even the messages themselves. It was the sheer audacity of them. The way they had twisted the entire situation to make it seem like I was the one in the wrong, as if I had been the one to reject them instead of the other way around. They weren't upset because they had hurt me, because they had made me feel like an outsider in my own family. No, they were upset because my absence had created an inconvenience for them, because people were asking questions they didn't want to answer, because my decision to remove myself from their perfect little picture had ruined the image they wanted to project to the world. I picked up my phone again, scrolling through the rest of the messages with growing amusement, shaking my head at how predictable they all were. Megan was playing the role of the concerned sister, trying to convince me that Mom was devastated, hoping I'd feel guilty enough to drop everything and come running back just to ease her conscience. Ryan, on the other hand, had gone straight for the selfish approach, making it all about his embarrassment. And then there was my mother, whose message was perhaps the most infuriating of them all. We didn't think it was a big deal. That was the part that stung the most. The quiet confirmation that my absence hadn't even registered as something worth reconsidering until it had started to cause them problems. For a brief moment, a part of me considered calling my mother back, considered allowing myself to be pulled back into the familiar cycle of guilt and obligation. But then I thought about the years of being taken for granted, the countless Christmases I had spent bending over backward to make their lives easier while getting nothing in return. And suddenly the decision didn't seem so difficult after all. I placed my phone face down on the nightstand, ignoring the vibrating notifications as another round of messages poured in. And instead, I turned my attention to the room service menu sitting beside me. If they wanted to spend their Christmas morning obsessing over where I was and why I wasn't groveling for a seat at their table, that was their problem. The sun was high in the sky by the time I finally pulled myself out of bed, stretching lazily as the scent of fresh brewed coffee and tropical flowers drifted in through the open balcony doors. As I reached for my phone out of pure habit, my screen was still flooded with unread messages and missed calls. But one notification stood out among the rest. A long rambling text from Megan. I hesitated for a moment, considering the possibility that whatever she had to say wasn't worth the energy it would take to read it. But curiosity and a deep-seated need for answers got the better of me. Before I could stop myself, I had already tapped the message open. Look, Lucas, I know you're mad and I get why, but I really think you're blowing this whole thing out of proportion. It wasn't just about the kids, okay? Ryan and I talked and we both agreed that it just doesn't feel fair sometimes. We're the ones raising children, dealing with all the stress, the financial burdens, the never-ending responsibilities, and you just don't contribute as much to the family. You don't understand what it's like to be a parent, to have real obligations, and honestly it just feels like you have it so much easier than we do. You take vacations, you have extra money, you don't have to think about anyone but yourself, and it just doesn't feel right that we do all the work while you just coast through life. I know that sounds harsh, but that's how we feel. We love you. But sometimes it's frustrating to watch you live this carefree life while we're drowning in responsibilities. We didn't mean to hurt you. We just, I don't know. We thought maybe it was time for you to realize that family means sacrifice. Hope you can understand." I stared at the screen, my fingers tightening around the phone as a slow, simmering anger spread through me. So that was it then. It had never really been about the kids at all. Never about traditions or space or anything remotely justifiable. They hadn't excluded me because I wasn't a parent. They had pushed me aside because they resented me. Because they had convinced themselves that my life was too easy, too carefree, too far removed from the struggles they had chosen for themselves. All these years I had bent over backward to be there for them, to show up whenever they needed me, to support them in every way I could. And yet, somehow none of that counted because I didn't have sleepless nights with crying babies or bank accounts drained by endless expenses. They had looked at my life, at my choices, and instead of feeling happy for me, they had decided that I was undeserving of a place in the family, that my contributions weren't enough because they didn't come wrapped in the same struggles they faced. I swallowed the bitter taste rising in my throat, my mind racing with every memory of the times I had sacrificed for them. The babysitting, the gifts, the holidays spent making sure their children had the best experiences possible. The years of being treated like the family's personal support system, always expected to be available, but never truly included. I needed to talk to someone, needed to hear a voice that wasn't laced with self-pity or disguised manipulation. So without thinking, I scrolled through my contacts until I found the one person I knew would give me the truth without sugarcoating it. Aunt Diane answered on the second ring, her warm, familiar voice immediately soothing the storm raging inside me. "Lucas, honey, I was wondering when you'd call," she said, a hint of knowing in her tone. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Did you know? Did you know that they felt this way about me? That they've been resenting me this whole time?" Diane sighed, the kind of long tired sigh that spoke of years of holding on to unspoken truths. "Sweetheart, I hate to say this, but yes, I knew," she admitted, her voice tinged with regret. "I've known for a long time that Megan and Ryan have had feelings about the way your life has turned out compared to theirs. It's not fair and it's not right, but they've always believed that because they have kids and you don't, they're somehow carrying a heavier burden. And in their minds, that means you should be doing more to balance the scales." I gritted my teeth. "So, they think I should be punished for living my life differently? They think that just because I don't have kids, I don't deserve the same level of respect and inclusion in this family." "Honey," Diane said softly, "they think your life is too easy. They think that because you're not struggling the way they are, you should be the one picking up the slack even if it's not fair. And the worst part? They don't even realize how selfish they're being. In their eyes, they're the ones who deserve more. And you're just lucky. And people resent luck when they don't feel like they have any." I let out a bitter, almost hollow laugh. It was never about kids. Never about traditions. Never about anything other than the fact that they had decided I didn't deserve to enjoy my life while they suffered through theirs. A slow, determined anger replaced the hurt I had been feeling, hardening into something sharp and unwavering. I had spent the last 3 days ignoring every single message from my family, watching as their texts shifted from guilt trips to outright frustration. Their attempts to lure me back home, growing more desperate with each passing hour. First, it had been the emotional manipulation from my mother, the carefully crafted sentences designed to make me feel like I was the villain in the situation. Then it had been Ryan, his tone turning sharp and annoyed as he accused me of making them look bad. Megan, of course, had tried to take a more diplomatic approach, insisting that everything had just been a misunderstanding. And then, late on Christmas Eve, the message finally came. The one that made me pause. "Come to Christmas dinner. We need to talk." It wasn't an apology, not really. And it certainly wasn't a declaration of regret. But there was something in those words, something almost pleading, something that hinted at the possibility that they were finally ready to face what they had done. For a long moment I sat there, my fingers hovering over the screen as I considered my options, weighing the satisfaction of standing my ground against the temptation of finally confronting them, on my terms, in my own way, with my own carefully chosen words. I wasn't going because I forgave them, and I certainly wasn't going because I missed them. But the idea of walking into that house, head held high, radiating the confidence and success they had spent years pretending not to see, was too good to pass up. The next morning I took my time getting ready, slipping into a perfectly tailored designer suit that I knew would make a statement, the fabric accentuating my frame in all the right places, the deep navy color giving me an air of quiet, confident authority. I paired it with an expensive watch and subtle cuff links that whispered wealth without screaming it. By the time I arrived at my parents' house, pulling up in the sleek rental car I had chosen just for the occasion, I could already picture the looks on their faces the moment they realized that I wasn't coming back as the same man they had so easily discarded. When I stepped inside, the air was thick with the scent of roasted turkey, cinnamon, and something unspoken. Something heavy, something tense that settled over the room like an invisible storm cloud waiting to break. The moment my mother saw me, she let out a small gasp, her hands flying to her mouth, as if she had genuinely started to believe I wouldn't show up at all. Without hesitation, she pulled me into a hug, holding on to me just a little too tightly. "Oh, sweetheart, I'm so glad you're here," she murmured, her voice thick with emotion. But when I glanced over her shoulder, my eyes landing on Megan and Ryan, standing stiffly near the dining room entrance, I knew the truth. My mother might have missed me, might have regretted the way things had unfolded, but my siblings weren't happy to see me. They were nervous. Megan's lips were pressed into a thin, uneasy line, her eyes darting toward Ryan as if silently willing him to say something first, but he only crossed his arms, his jaw tightening as he forced out a clipped, "Hey." I smiled, slow and deliberate, letting the silence stretch just a second too long before responding. "Hey," I said, my voice light, unconcerned, making it painfully clear that I wasn't here to beg for their approval. My father cleared his throat, stepping forward in an attempt to break the unbearable tension that had settled over the room. "Let's eat," he said, his voice gruff but forced, as if trying to pretend that everything was perfectly normal. I didn't move right away, letting the weight of the moment sink in, letting them all feel the shift in power. The way the ground beneath them had changed. The way I was no longer someone they could control or diminish. Then finally I stepped forward, letting my shoes click against the polished hardwood floor as I made my way toward the dining table, taking my seat with a kind of effortless confidence that told them exactly what they needed to know. The tension at the dinner table was thick enough to cut with a knife, pressing against the room like an unseen force, heavy and suffocating, filling every corner with the weight of words left unsaid. Silverware clinked against fine china. Glasses were lifted and set down with just a little too much force, and every polite smile felt stretched too tight, barely concealing the discomfort simmering just beneath the surface. My mother was doing her best to keep the conversation light, asking about the food, complimenting the turkey, making comments about how the grandkids were growing up so fast, but nobody was really listening. Megan and Ryan kept shooting each other glances, silent messages passing between them as if trying to figure out how to handle me, as if trying to decide whether to address the elephant in the room or pretend that it didn't exist. I didn't say much at first, letting them squirm, letting them feel the weight of their own choices, letting them sit with the knowledge that I hadn't come crawling back in defeat, but had arrived stronger, more composed, and completely unfazed by their sudden attempts at forced reconciliation. And then, just as I expected, Ryan finally broke the silence, his voice dripping with forced casualness, his words carrying just enough of an edge to make it clear that he hadn't let go of his resentment. "So Lucas," he said, leaning back in his chair, smirking just slightly, "how's your little solo trip? Must have been lonely spending Christmas all by yourself in some fancy hotel." I didn't even blink at the condescension laced in his voice. Instead, I set my glass down, smiled, and answered in the most nonchalant voice I could muster. "Not at all," I said, tilting my head slightly. "It was actually the best holiday I've ever had. First-class flights, champagne breakfasts, ocean views, massages every morning. Absolute peace. Honestly, I can't believe I didn't do it sooner." The words landed exactly the way I intended, hitting Ryan square in the ego, making Megan's shoulders go stiff, making my mother pause mid-bite, her expression torn between discomfort and something almost resembling admiration. For a brief second nobody spoke, the weight of my statement hanging in the air like an unexpected slap. Until finally Megan scoffed, shaking her head, her tone sharper than before. "Must be nice," she muttered, her lips curving into a tight, bitter smile. "Having money to waste on something like that." That was it. I let my fork drop onto my plate with a sharp clink, the sound cutting through the strained atmosphere like a warning shot, my patience snapping in an instant. The simmering anger I had kept at bay finally rose to the surface. Slowly, deliberately, I turned my gaze toward Megan, watching as she shifted uncomfortably, clearly regretting opening her mouth, but not quite willing to back down. "Waste," I repeated, my voice dangerously calm, my eyes locking onto hers with a steadiness that made her falter. "You think I wasted money on myself? That's funny, Megan, because I don't remember you or Ryan ever thinking it was a waste when I was spending thousands of dollars every year on your kids. Birthdays, Christmases, babysitting, last-minute emergencies, expensive gifts, paying for things you couldn't afford because you needed help. I've spent years putting this family before myself, and not once did either of you ever say, maybe Lucas shouldn't have to do all of this alone. But now that I finally do something for myself, suddenly it's a waste." Silence. Not just a regular silence but a deep, suffocating, tension-filled silence. The kind that stretches too long. The kind that makes people shift in their seats. The kind that forces everyone to reckon with an uncomfortable truth they had been trying to avoid. I exhaled slowly, leaning forward slightly, my voice lower now, steadier, filled with something colder, something sharper. "Maybe you're right," I said, my tone thoughtful, my words deliberate. "Maybe I don't understand what it's like to be a parent. But you know what? You don't understand gratitude. You don't understand what it's like to have someone in your corner. Someone who gives without expecting anything in return. Someone who shows up for you time and time again, only to be told they don't belong when it's no longer convenient. Megan swallowed hard, her eyes darting to Ryan, looking for support, for backup, for anyone to say something that would turn the situation in her favor. But Ryan wasn't looking at her. He was staring at his plate, face blank, refusing to meet my gaze. I pushed my chair back slightly, not enough to get up just yet, but enough to let them know that I could leave if I wanted to, that I wasn't trapped here, that I didn't need their approval. I've spent my whole life trying to be a good brother, a good son, a good uncle, and all it got me was a family that only values me when I'm useful. I continued, my voice steady, my anger no longer raw, but refined, precise, controlled. So, if you're expecting me to feel bad for finally putting myself first, you're going to be waiting a long time. For the first time all night my mother spoke, her voice soft, careful, as if afraid of making things worse. Lucas, honey, we never wanted to make you feel like you weren't part of the family. I let out a slow, humorless laugh, shaking my head, pushing my chair back fully now, standing up, looking down at them at this table, at this entire dynamic that I had spent years trying to hold together, only to realize it had never truly included me. You didn't have to say it, I replied simply, gathering my things, my voice clear, unwavering. You showed me. And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving them sitting there in the thick, heavy silence of their own making. Knowing that this time I wasn't going to be the one who came back to fix it. I walked out of that dining room with my head high, my footsteps slow and deliberate, feeling the weight of every single word I had spoken still hanging thick in the air behind me. I didn't bother looking back, didn't give them the satisfaction of seeing hesitation in my face, didn't allow myself even a flicker of doubt about whether or not I had done the right thing. The cold December air bit at my skin as I stepped outside, my shoes clicking against the icy pavement, the sky stretching dark and endless above me. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the muffled sounds of Christmas music from another house, the soft hum of car engines as people drove to their own holiday gatherings, the distant laughter of a family that didn't belong to me. As I slid into the car and shut the door behind me, my phone buzzed against the leather seat. It was Ryan, and his message was as dismissive and condescending as I had expected it to be. You're being dramatic. You always make everything about you. I exhaled a slow, humorless laugh, shaking my head at how utterly predictable he was, how easily he fell back on the same tired deflections, the same refusal to take responsibility for anything, the same unwillingness to see past his own narrow, self-centered perspective. But then, just as the temptation to let it go entirely settled over me, another message popped up. This one from my mother, her words simple but carrying a quiet weight. I'm sorry. You deserved better. I read the words twice, letting them sink in, feeling something shift inside me. Something small but undeniable. Something that wasn't quite forgiveness but wasn't entirely bitterness either. I had waited years to hear those words, had spent more holidays than I cared to admit, wishing for some kind of acknowledgement that my role in this family had been more than just a convenient extra, that I had given more than they had ever recognized. I didn't respond. Not yet, because I wasn't ready to. Instead, I tossed my phone onto the passenger seat and started the car, letting the warmth of the heater spread through my fingers as I pulled away from the house without so much as a backward glance. I drove back to my hotel, the lights of the city blurring through windows fogged with my breath. The Christmas decorations that had seemed so cheerful just days ago now felt hollow somehow, like promises no one intended to keep. But I wasn't sad. Not really. I felt strangely light, as if I'd set down a burden I'd been carrying for so long I'd forgotten it was there. Back in my suite, I kicked off my shoes and loosened my tie, exchanging the designer suit for the plush hotel robe. I poured myself a generous glass of whiskey from the bottle I'd ordered earlier and stepped out onto the balcony. The night was clear. Stars scattered across the sky like diamonds on black velvet. Below me, the hotel's Christmas lights twinkled against the darkness. And somewhere, faint music drifted up from the bar. For the first time in years, I didn't feel the pressure to make anyone else's holiday perfect. I didn't have to worry about whether the gifts were enough, or if the decorations were just right. I didn't have to smile through passive-aggressive comments or pretend that being treated like an afterthought didn't hurt. Tonight there was just me, this moment, and the surprising realization that it was more than enough. I had just stepped out of a long, luxurious shower when my phone buzzed. It was Aunt Diane. You're not going to believe this. Her message read, after you left, Megan and Ryan started going at each other. Apparently, your little speech stirred up some things they weren't ready to deal with. Ryan called Megan a spoiled brat who always played the victim. Megan snapped back that Ryan was lazy and entitled. And before you know it, they were screaming at each other in front of the entire family. Your dad had to step in to break it up. And your mom started crying about how the holidays were ruined. I thought you'd like to know that in the end, they destroyed their own perfect Christmas without any help from you. I settled onto the balcony lounger with a glass of whiskey, a quiet, knowing chuckle escaping my lips as I imagined the chaos that must have unfolded. For years I had been the one holding everything together, smoothing over their fights, fixing the damage, making sure the holidays stayed peaceful. even when tensions ran high. But now, without me there to absorb the impact, without me there to take the blame, without me there to be their scapegoat, the entire illusion had crumbled around them, exposing every bitter truth they had spent years trying to avoid. I wasn't the problem. I had never been the problem. They had just needed someone to blame, someone to carry the weight of their own regrets, their own disappointments, their own unresolved resentment. And now, without me there to take it, they had turned on each other instead. The next morning, I woke to another text from my mother. Please call me when you can. I considered it for a moment before setting my phone aside. There would be time for conversations later perhaps, but not today. Today belonged to me. I ordered breakfast to my room. Fresh fruit, warm croissants, and the best coffee I'd had in years. After breakfast, I booked myself a spa day. A massage, facial, and grooming session that left me feeling renewed in a way I hadn't experienced in years. As I walked along the beach that evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of gold and crimson, I realized something profound. For my entire adult life, I had measured my worth by what I could give to others, how I could support them, how I could make their lives easier. I had never stopped to consider that I deserved the same care and consideration I had so freely given. I lifted my phone and snapped a picture of the sunset, but this time I didn't post it online. This moment was just for me. I smiled to myself, feeling the warm sand between my toes and the gentle ocean breeze on my skin. For the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was missing anything. I didn't feel excluded. I didn't feel abandoned. I felt free. Have you ever felt like you were the scapegoat in your family? Or had to make a tough choice to put yourself first? Tell me what you think in the comments below. I really want to know your stories.